Hey everyone, Tony D and Little Joan here with your Hollywoke hot take, and this will be a more concentrated one. I'd like to talk about this op-ed about the Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Now, you guys may or may not remember what the Falcon and the Winter Soldier is, but it is two superhero characters from the MCU movies. The Winter Soldier is Captain America's former sidekick, Bucky. See, Captain America, when he was fighting in World War II, he had a sidekick named Bucky, who in the comics was a kid, but in the movies he was a grown man. And Cap and Bucky fought the bad guys from Germany and the Axis, and then Cap was frozen and then woke up in the modern age. Bucky, in the movies, was experimented on and turned into kind of like a cyborg. I think he was frozen too for a while. And then when he was brought out of it, he wasn't himself. He was killing for the bad guys. And the bad guys were, I guess they were AIM and Hydra, those guys in the movies. The Falcon became Captain America's sidekick in the modern age, and he was in a bunch of movies with him, and including the Winter Soldier movies where he where he eventually saves Bucky. And then when Cap retires, spoilers, at Endgame, he gives the shield to the Falcon and says, "Well, you're going to be Captain America now, and I'm retiring." So the Falcon and Winter Soldier is like, here's Captain America's sidekicks continuing the battle for good, right? Now, the Marvel movies came out in various phases. I believe Endgame was the end of Phase 3, and we are now entering Phase 4. And in Phase 4, the worry amongst a lot of the fans was that everything was getting too woke, way too woke. And a lot of stuff ended up on Disney Plus, due to the virus, and it's a shame Black Widow didn't get her movie earlier and whatever. So what I was expecting from this was an extremely woke TV show with way too much politics and gender and racism and all that kind of stuff. But this op-ed is very interesting because, and it's called Disney Plus series, The Falcon and the Winter Soldier Avoids America's Tougher Realities. Now, if I had said to you, I don't know, just 5 years ago, yeah, you know that new superhero TV show? It's avoiding the tougher realities of talking about America. Like, you'd be like, so what? It's a superhero TV show. It's not what a superhero TV show typically is supposed to be. It's not supposed to be all the time extremely political and tackling all the tough issues. It is supposed to be a comic book. There's supposed to be some fun and some lightness to it. But the leftist, and I think the person who wrote this article or op-ed is pretty left, pretty woke, simply by the wording here, which we'll go through. Based on the first episode of The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, says the subheadline, Marvel's approach looks likely to be less serious and less thoughtful than its predecessors. Okay, so you're saying that, Avengers Endgame, which was, a non-stop spectacular about superheroes fighting Thanos, was somehow, more serious and more thought-provoking. I really don't think so. That was like a 2-hour fight. I enjoyed it. Don't get me wrong. I mean, I had some criticisms of the movie, and I think I talked about that in a video, but for the most part, I thought it was great. And and had I been like the core audience, had I been like, at my comic book peak, like at, I don't know, wasn't, I was gonna say age 15, but it really wasn't age 15. It was more like age 22 when I was really getting into comics, and I would have loved it. I mean, I would have lost my damn mind for Endgame, except for that one scene. And you know the scene I mean. The female Avengers assemble, which was a stupid scene. Dumb scene. Other than that, the movie's awesome, I thought. But this is by Noah Berlatsky, cultural critic. So I'd just like to add my opinion to the mix in this. So I'm going to read you some of this. The new Disney Plus Marvel Cinematic Universe series, The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, is about the legacy of Captain America. Inevitably, it's also about the legacy of America. I don't know about that. It's a comic book. Cap fought lots of different villains over the years. If you read comics, do they have stories about America? Oh, yeah, sure. But they also just have straight up crime fighting and mysteries and all kinds of things. I mean, there's hundreds and hundreds of comics of Captain America. I know, Joan. I know. I'm talking about comics again. All right. You just go back to sleep. Go back to sleep. There you go. Continuing. This isn't new ground for the superhero genre on television. HBO's Watchmen and Amazon's The Boys have both used costume adventurers to critically examine the United States history of racism and colonialism and how that historical record impacts its place in the world. Yeah, but what the writer of this doesn't seem to understand is, first up, Watchmen was an extremely unusual comic, and it was a graphic novel. The TV series Watchmen was sort of Hollywood producers extrapolating their woke nonsense from the first movie and, putting it onto the screen. And in my view, what I saw of it looked painfully woke. Like everything had to be super, super, politicized, racialized, and that wasn't what the Watchmen was about. Although the Watchmen did delve into some interesting stuff and more adult stuff, it was political, but it wasn't anything like the spin-off TV series, which was not written by Alan Moore at all. In fact, Alan Moore is pretty PO'd about, what's been done to his comics over the years. The Watchmen graphic novel is great. And if you read it, what it's really about is a superhero, super brainiac superhero who comes up with this plan to unite the entire world by fooling them into thinking it's an alien invasion, that if they don't unite, they'll all be killed. And so in order to achieve that, he stoops to some pretty low things. I mean, he does some pretty nasty stuff. So major spoilers. I just gave you one, but here's some more. If you haven't read The Watchmen, you should. So in the Watchmen graphic novel, what he does is he uses his genius and that of a bunch of people. And he's got millions and millions of dollars. So he hires them to go to this island and basically use superhero technology and super whatever to genetically engineer a giant alien-looking beast. And but then he kills all the scientists, so they can't possibly tell anybody. He blows up the ship as they're leaving the island. And then in the climax of the book, he teleports the alien into the middle of Times Square, where the psychic energy kills millions of people. And I'm not sure if he does it just in Times Square. He does it all over the world in major cities. But he kills millions of people in the process in order to, fool everybody into what, fool everyone into believing that an alien invasion is coming, and if they don't put aside their differences and unite, they'll all be killed. And that is way different than dealing with racism and colonialism. People on the left are obsessed. I knew this guy was a leftist the moment he mentioned colonialism because it's a term, it's one thing to say, yeah, the United States has a history of racism. It's completely another to go the next step and say, well, they have a history of colonialism. The United States was a colony. And so these leftists just ignore that historical fact and, are just gunning the engine saying everybody's being oppressed by America. And it's simply not true. I mean, this is what leftism does to the brain, I guess. Continuing. But based on the first episode of The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, in parentheses, the only of the series 6 made available for review. Sounds a little resentful. The MCU's approach looks likely to be less serious, less thoughtful than its predecessors. Again, I'm not sure which predecessors you're talking about. I mean, other than Captain Marvel's feminist chip on her shoulder, where was all the thought-provoking wokeness? I'm not really seeing it yet. You seem to be comparing apples and oranges. You seem to be comparing the Watchmen TV series and The Boys, which The Boys isn't really political. Not really. It's more just sleazy. It's more about, The Boys is more about how power corrupts people. The superheroes in The Boys are corrupted by power. They just have too much, and it's messed them up. They're too famous, they're too rich, they're too powerful, and they can't cope with it. So they're more akin to rock stars or billionaires or, people who are in positions of power who just abuse it. And that's been a theme. The creator of The Boys comic, it's Garth Ennis, right? Is it Garth Ennis? I always confuse him with one of the other creators. And anyhow, it's about how power corrupts. It's not hung up on colonialism and racism, although that can be in there. You can have characters that are racist, and it's not about racism, right? So in The Watchmen, one of the superhero characters, he was kind of racist in certain situations. He had gone to Vietnam, and I think he said some racist things there. And then some of the heroes, they didn't want to be associated with Vietnam, and there were all different kinds of characters. It wasn't all cut and dry wokeness, but that seems to be the standard in this op-ed. The Falcon and the Winter Soldier picks up after the events of 2019's Avengers Endgame, and the conclusion of that film, the original Captain America, Steve Rogers, retired and handed his shield over to his friend and ally, Sam Wilson, aka Falcon, Anthony Mackie. Why do you have to call him an ally? What, it was his friend. They were friends. Friend is higher than ally. And you can't really be a friend without being an ally. I think it'd be more appropriate like friend and business associate or a sidekick, partner, whatever you want to call it. Ally just seems, again, it's all this woke nonsense. I wonder if they would call him an ally if Anthony Mackie's character wasn't black. So, in the first episode of the new series, though, Sam decides he can't take up the Captain America identity because the shield, quote, feels like it belongs to someone else. He gives it to the U.S. government to preserve as a museum piece. Now, here's where it gets Super woke. Steve was white. Sam is black. What? What the hell, man? First off, you already got a picture of Anthony Mackie. He's a famous actor. He's pretty famous. Um, uh, Anyone who knows the characters from Endgame certainly knows who the Falcon was. Um, but my God, this is a weird trend in reporting now, where they report on the races of the people they're talking about, and it's not even like constructed in a sentence. Like, since Steve is white and Sam is black, there's obviously blah blah blah. It's just like Steve is white, Sam is black. What? Like, why don't you just put like a little counter on the side of the article saying, well, here are all the white people I mentioned, and here are all the black people, and here are the races of the other people I mentioned. I mean, what kind of writer does that? It's nuts. Like, I don't. Well, one of the things we did in Wokistan, one of the little tricks you'll note in the book, is whenever we introduced a character, we specifically didn't mention their race or gender until one of the woke tards comes out of the woodwork and starts screaming and saying a bunch of woke BS, and then the character suddenly goes, why are you lecturing me about slavery? I'm black, to give you an example. And that's part of the joke in the book, right? It's like, these people are so caught up in their ideology, that's all that matters. And even when you point out, well, wait a minute, by your own logic, you shouldn't be yelling at me, it doesn't matter. But this, Steve was white, Sam is black. Actually, the sentence should say, Steve is white, because he's not dead. Sam is black, if you're going to be correct, or technically correct, the best kind of correct. A storyline about a black man taking up the Captain America mantle is obviously in part about the relationship between America and racism. Yes, because you can't mention any black person without suddenly diving into racism. That is absolutely not true. It's not about racism. It's not between America and racism. Captain America is the best of, in terms of, I don't want to say America, but he sort of does represent America in that he's Captain America, but he's like the best of the best. He's like the nicest guy in the world, and he's the super soldier serum makes him like, the perfect sort of fighting machine, and he's noble and nice and all the great things. So to say it's about the relationship between America and racism is to imply that Cap is somehow racist, and he's not. He's not. That was his buddy. That's his friend. So get off of Captain America's back is what I'm saying, Noah. Continuing, a black Captain America is a symbolic assertion that America should represent black people as well as white people. No. Did you see any of the movies? That is not. It's not symbolic at all. It is Steve picking the most qualified guy for the gig, because Bucky is not qualified to be the new Captain America, although he becomes Captain America, I think, in the comics a few times. And there are other people who are Captain America. But Falcon is the obvious choice in the movies because Bucky's kind of messed up from the various things that happened to him. And Bucky is always Cap's sidekick. Since Bucky is the original sidekick, or the Winter Soldier, whatever you want to call him, it makes more sense that Falcon be Cap. Plus, he's got wings. He can fly. Cap couldn't do that. Continuing, it demands that America see black people as central to its own identity. No. Where are you getting this? None of that. I have not seen the episode, but none of that is in the subtext of anything leading up to it, and I've seen all the stuff leading up to it. I think he's simultaneously demanding more that's not there, while also criticizing that it's not there, in my view. Again, Watchmen. Why is this article mentioning Watchmen? As near as I could tell, that was one of the worst shows HBO ever put out. Because, in my view, Hollywood never understood comics. And I personally had discussions with some of the Hollywood producers, and I tried to explain to them, the fandom and how it worked. And they just didn't want to listen or didn't care. So they just forged ahead with their own deal. And I don't think this guy really understands comics. Again, he writes, Watchmen was willing to talk about racism and black history directly. So what? That's not what superheroes were necessarily about. Yeah, some superheroes delved into that. Some superheroes were closely tied into that. And in fact, comic books in the 60s and 70s were more subversive. So they were considered like, oh, you're reading comic books. That's going to rot your brain, kid. And meanwhile, sometimes they would tackle tough issues. But a lot of times it was just big, muscly guys punching each other and throwing each other through buildings. So don't overstate what it is. And stop talking about Watchmen. And he's really not talking about the Watchmen graphic novel. He's talking about the Watchmen TV show, which was super woke and had tons of racial stuff in it. The regular Watchmen graphic novel had some, but it was a big, broad world that wasn't obsessed with this tiny bit of wokeness, tiny bit of just race and gender, race and gender, race and gender, race and gender. Get off of it, dude. My God. It's like you're drowning in wokeness in this article. Continuing. Its iconic first superhero, Hooded Justice, was a black man who survived the white supremacist Tulsa Massacre and fought the Klan. Yeah? What does this have to do with Falcon and the Winter Soldier? Nothing. Okay? It's a completely different comic, done by a different comic book company, and you're talking about that nonstop because that's woke, and apparently the Falcon and Winter Soldier isn't. In the corner here, it pitches Watchmen's flawed take on criminal justice, recycles the hero black cop trope, whatever that means. So, it's like he decided to write an article about the Falcon and Winter Soldier, and then he just segues into talking about the Watchmen TV show and can't get off of it. The MCU, though, is much more coy about these issues. Sam's sister, Sarah, I can't pronounce her last name, or her first name, suggested fairly directly that she can't get a business loan because of the racism of financial institutions, but he insists that Sam's relationship with the Shield and with America is strictly personal. He decides not to use the shield because he doesn't feel it's right for him. No one, neither Sam nor anyone else, talks about what it might mean for Captain America to be black. So what? Not everybody's as obsessed with race like you are. No black friends or colleagues suggest it might be important for Sam to take up the mantle to help confront racial injustice. See? It's like he needs to write it. The leftist, especially with regard to the cultural stuff, if it can't be controlled, if it doesn't toe the line and toe the narrative like it everyone else, then it has to either be destroyed or changed. So no doubt these people are going to write article after article about why. Why isn't this happening in the TV show? Why? Meanwhile, I don't think these people watch this stuff. I really don't. Because if you mire every single show with all these politics, all this racial stuff, all this gender stuff, it's all the same. Okay? You can make shows like that, and there's an audience for it, sure. But there's also an audience for straight up superhero show. Some people just like superhero stuff. They're big fans of Daredevil. They just want Daredevil to fight some crime and solve some mysteries and maybe fight a court case or two. They want Batman to be the world's greatest detective. They don't want him fighting racial injustice. That's not his beat, okay? Could there be a story about racial injustice in Batman? Yeah, and there probably has been a few dozen of them over the 500,000 comics there's been, but that's not his main deal. You can make a guy, and that could be his main deal. Go ahead and sell it if you think it's so popular and needed and wonderful and woke. Problem is, you people won't do that because you don't have any guts, and you know you can't compete with what's popular, what's actually popular, what people actually like. You know people hate that stuff. You know it. It's not that they hate it, but they get annoyed by it pretty quick. Now, if you're subtle about it, they'll tolerate it, or they won't even notice it. This show sounds way more moderate than any of the other stuff coming out of the MCU currently. Perhaps this is a sign the MCU is finally jettisoning wokeness. Oh, let it happen, Lord, let it happen. Could I actually get Disney Plus? Well, not until you stop, doing business with China, I would say. I don't want to read the whole thing, but it just goes on and on like that. My God. Jeez. The lack of engagement with the downsides of America's obsession with border security is matched by a lack of engagement with the less savory aspects of America's military intervention. I just scrolled down a couple of paragraphs, and that's the sentence. That's the sentence. What the hell? Oh my God, I gotta read this. Sentence before. I'll have to read the whole paragraph. Okay, so the soldier who describes the anarchist motives admits the borderless world sounds appealing, but he insists that the group's idealism is foolish. Sam agrees. Quote, every time something gets better for one group, it gets worse from another, he says. Such zero-sum logic casually buttresses a reactionary status quo. If more civil rights for one group means less for another, the haves are fully justified by ethics and self-interest and crushing protest by the have-nots. At this point, I don't even know if he's given an accurate representation of the show, but I will say that most leftist ideology is presented as a zero-sum game. Because Jeff Bezos is rich, you should be rich, is the way they present it. Why should he have all the money? That's wrong. Everybody should have equal amounts. That's a zero-sum game, and it's foolish. Continuing, the way the discussion hops from border controls to a blanket rejection of change is disturbing, giving our ongoing orgy of anti-immigrant sentiment and a call for strong borders that has led to a concentration camps for migrants. Wow. Whoa. This is NBC, right? This is NBC. Yeah, this is the cultural critic at NBC. This is a guy talking about superheroes, and he segues into, oh, we have concentration camps for migrants. Are you out of your mind? You're nuts, I think. This whole op-ed is nuts. and way overblown. As always, there's nothing inherently wrong with a lighthearted show about superheroes punching each other. The Falcon and the Winter Soldier does itself no favors, though, by pretending it has something to say about America. Well, maybe not everybody is so black-pilled about America as you, Noah. My God. Yeah, so this is the kind of cultural criticism we get now. It sounds like it came straight out of China. I would love to see this cultural critic tackle something coming out of China or any place else. But especially China. I wonder if he would talk about the Uyghur concentration camps, and how that segues into whatever cultural thing the Chinese are pushing on people. Yeah. It's just amazing. This is very Hollywoke. But fortunately, it's in probably a tiny corner of the NBC website, to be read by woke people who probably don't watch, the Falcon and the Winter Soldier anyway. Um, it just they're just trying to like knock it down a little bit because it's not as woke. But in my mind, what really hurts Disney is not that their shows aren't woke. It's everything that happened with Star Wars and Gina Carano. I mean, that seems to be hurting them. Here was a popular actress on a popular hit show, and they got to cancel her because somebody on Twitter got their panties in a bunch. So, yeah, I mean, it's just more Hollywoke, just more Hollywoke, and quite frankly, you know, I covered some of this in Hollywoke, another novel, but I couldn't dive too deep in it because some of it's just so damn boring, right? It's like you people are just obsessed and you won't stop talking about this stuff and you don't know what you're. I mean, 99% of these people are super white and they don't know anything. They just feel incredibly guilty, or they are looking to virtue signal at every possibility because they've decided that's what makes a good person. Therefore, let me rush and virtue signal as quickly as possible. Part of the problem, too, is just the state of journalism. I mean, if you think the regular journalism is bad, I mean, entertainment journalism was already in the toilet. So making a toilet woke, ugh, should just flush it all at this point. Just start over fresh. Just let Hollywood collapse and we'll rebuild it, I don't know, somewhere in the Midwest.